Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. It's Nikki Jordan again with another episode of Got Space. So this one I'm enjoying with one of my famous lattes that you can see on Instagram or Facebook. This is heavily oiled because I needed something for a good reason today, and we'll talk about that. So this episode is about, are you functioning as an infinite being or behaving as an infinite being, or are you doing so as a human being? And many of you might say, well, I am a human being, right? Well, that's true. We're all here in human body, and our infinite being, in my experience, has chosen to be here, and you can be in connection with that at any time you want. However, in this reality and the way that we're raised, we function as human beings, and that is that we value our thoughts, our feelings, and emotions, right? Our reactions to things, our judgments. We actually value these more than we even know. Let me have a sip. Lavender, ginger, cardamom, turmeric, can't remember what else, and homemade almond milk. So it has been very windy here. It has been one of those days where the biggest trees are swaying, the power lines have gone down, there's junk everywhere in the streets. You know, people are without power whether they know it or not by looking at the lines down on the ground. And this happened following a full moon. And I could feel the energy shift from Friday. It's now here Sunday. I could feel it shift from Friday, where it was a little more gleeful, to Saturday, where it started to contract, into Sunday, where here at least it's kind of chaotic and people fell into their emotions. So now, that's our geographical location. I have no idea what's happening somewhere else, but it begs for this discussion, because what happens when you start to feel grumpy, or you start to, nice Monday, huh? Start to feel grumpy wherever you are, start to feel on the other side of the date line to me. It happens when you start to feel grumpy, feel edgy, or you start to notice that from people around you, or suddenly you or everybody else becomes very judgy. They might become angry, right? And so when you're an infinite being chooses space, chooses ease, chooses joy, chooses consciousness. It's a very peaceful place to be. And a human being values its emotions, and particularly its point of view, point of reference, because it sees itself as separate and distinct from other things. So you see yourself as separate and distinct from your coworkers, from your partner, from your parents, from your children, from your friends, whoever it is. We are separate and distinct, and we have a mind. We have where we create our own thoughts, where we make a lot of decisions based on our calculations of things, our experience, what we expect based on our experiences, what we project based on our experiences. And we tend to feel like others are judging us, which allows us to shrink away from them, or we fear that they're going to judge us, right? When in fact, usually we're the ones doing that ourselves, right? We start by judging them, separating from them, projecting, expecting what they're going to be like, and we separate from them. So that's an access consciousness tool that I love. And I love using it on vacation with family because everybody projects some kind of idea that they're going to have on what the vacation is going to be like for them, right? In their own mind. They project and they expect it. And then the moment they notice it's not that way, or whatever is that showed up is the way it is, they separate from it. And then they judge it. So before they were with the vacation, and now they're separating from it because maybe other people's ideas came into play, or everybody had a different idea of what that vacation was going to be like, and the group went together and it wasn't what each individual person wanted. And so they separate from those people, they judge them, right? And they suffer, right? They suffer. We reject. Now we do it with ourselves all the time. And this is something that human beings do. An infinite being would not call that joy, right? And if you're looking for ease, lightness, like my partner likes to say, I just like to have everything be light. And when it gets not light, it makes him edgy, right? But then what happens when we're particularly in a city or somewhere where there's a lot of people, or you're just very, very sensitive. You could be a very, very sensitive person, is that you start to pick up on the wavelengths of things around you. And so if you're feeling crummy, one of the things that will happen is you'll start to feel all the crumminess, all the crummies that are out there. You'll start to want to feel like them, or their wavelengths of crumminess, anger, whatever, will add to yours. And then suddenly you're riding this steeper wave, and it feels more intense, more real, right? More palpable. And so that's when I always try to remind myself, when I start to feel edgy, to step back and say, would an infinite being feel this? That's a question that you can ask that will give you an instant sensation and probably a likely no. And so once you use this enough, you train yourself, because the next question is, then why am I? Because you're an infinite being. If you don't think you're an infinite being, or you don't believe in the infinite or the universe or God or whatever you want to call it, then this conversation is not for you, right? If you are shut the door on that, it's not for you. If you're skeptical, you're welcome to listen, but I will tell your energy to stay where it is because it cannot enlighten other people, right? If you're doubtful, you're like a semi-permeable membrane. You'll stick your hands in when you want to, but you won't let yourself receive anything, right? And then what if you're curious and open? You don't have to know the answer, believe it, or anything, but you can still be curious and open. That's how I got everything I know. I didn't know whether it was true or not, but I wanted it to tell me. Okay, so what this world truly needs is people to function as an infinite being. Why? Because we've been functioning as human beings for thousands of years, and what has it gotten us? And right now the world is a little bit stuck. It's a little bit stuck of who's in control. It's a little bit stuck as to what people think is right. You know, that's one thing about human beings. They're always trying to prove they're right. And if they can't prove they're right, they're going to prove somebody else is wrong to prove they're right. It's a real insecurity. We function from insecurity a lot. We're always trying to prove ourselves, or we're worried that somebody doesn't think nicely of us. So we put ourselves more in their space. And we bother them, right? So it's a way of being in someone else's space because we're insecure and we need them. If you're an infinite being, you don't need anything. Why? Because when I connect up to my infinite being, right, I'm with everything. I can go to an animal in Africa. I can go to someone in a cafe that I've never even met. There's all these places I can go, right? And I can sense something, right? So when I'm an infinite being, I can do that. For example, I'm going to give you an example that happened last week. I was taking my daughter somewhere. I just took her today, and she had just told me a story about her friend's dog got out and got lost. So this is a dog they have to be very careful of. Got out and got lost. And I said to her, don't worry, I'll do energy work on the dog. I'll talk to the dog while you're gone. So after their event was over, she was talking to a friend who was very sad. And I had just told my daughter, he's coming home. He told me he's coming home. I told her that like 5 minutes before she talked to this person. She told that person, and she looked out the window and there was the dog. Actually looked out the window and there was the dog, and she said, my mom just told me that the dog told her it's coming home. So I put myself in conversation with something that I don't even really know. How can I do that? Because I can move. I can move location. I can sense energy. It's a very good way if, let's say, somebody is trying out for a play, or they're trying to get a job or something like that. If you've seen my website from last year, and I'm going to do it again probably for people this year too, meaning in this season, I burn candles for people. I burn candles for people because it's a way into who they are. And so sometimes I do it for people, for a soccer team, for an individual, for a concept. And I'll burn candles to connect with the energy and then to change their world. And it really does work. I tell you, the more that I know that someone's struggling with something, and I don't know why I have that, some kind of focus, some kind of in with the fire, that fire burns, it changes energy, right? I can go right in there because that is my gift. And I believe a lot of people could have it if they actually thought it was real, right? And so I know when my husband's feeling bad about something, or my daughter, or my neighbor or something, and I work with them like that, I actually have the feedback because I can see it pretty quickly that things have changed. So when you're functioning as an infinite being, you can feel where you went. As the human being, you don't know where you went. You're in reaction to everything that you're thinking and feeling, or what you presume others are thinking or feeling, or what. So many times people will use such negative stuff. Oh no, they're going to do this. Like, I was at a soccer game and someone said about their child who was a goalie, they're going to fail, basically. I looked at them and I said, do not put that energy out there. As a healer, I would never put that energy out there, but we do it all the time, right? We do. That's why it's very hard for me to sit and listen to conversations with people sometimes, because I listen to so much of what people are talking or the way they say, the way they function from, that is actually putting the energy of failure out there. Right? The energy of failure will get you failure because that's what it wants to resonate with. The energy of the word try is I'm not going to really do it. Right? It's already telling someone you're not going to do it. And I don't know why someone would really say it. Now, obviously we'll say that now and then, but someone who functions from I'll try and doesn't have a lot of success needs to really look at their vocabulary. Somebody who whines a lot, or somebody, like whatever, we all have some default negative aspect of ourselves, right? Something that looks down at ourselves or separates us from other people, because an infinite being is not separated from others. So that's how I can travel time and space and work with somebody, is because I'm not separate from them. I don't see those boundaries, and I can work in their molecular structure to change it. When I can work in their molecular structure to change it, then I can work from the infinite knowing, right? But when I'm a human being and reacting to that person, I'm basically creating an action-reaction atmosphere between us, such that either they get more of what they don't want to be like, or you think, a lot of times we aren't even aware we're judging people, but the way that we talk to them exacerbates their situation. Right? Or you think you're better than somebody about something, right? And so that's an immediate judgment of them because of an insecurity of you, right? Because an infinite being wouldn't care whether another person succeeded or failed. They would just hope that there was joy, and they would work towards joy for everything. So in order for this world to change, the way we function from, which is a lot of putting each other down in order to succeed ourselves, just, look in marketing or politics or not having a very big mind right now. But if you look at all of these things, you can see where people have to win by someone else losing. You have to be great by somebody else not being great, right? So the greatest thing I can tell people is to pick the person that you least are getting along with right now. The least, the one you like the least get along with, someone that's in your life or even not, like President of the United States, I don't know. Somebody who's on the opposite side of what you think is a way to treat people, right? And then stop for a second and realize every single body is suffering. Why? Because it's the human condition to suffer. Why? Because we function in those ways I just described that cause us to suffer. We reject things. We project things and expect things that allow us to be disappointed, right? And when we're disappointed, then we separate from those people, and we judge them, or those situations, we judge them, and then we reject them. So now we've created a very unhappy existence for everybody, and we've put that energy into the world. The energy of have nots, win, lose, I'm better, you suck. All of that is just continually keeping this world functioning that way, because as soon as you change your vibration, everything you're in reaction with will change as well. It is a chain reaction of energy. That's why I say got space, ? Because energy in space is wide and open and free. Energy in contraction, in a closed, enclosed space, like contracting your own energy towards yourself because you're rejecting everything out there, or you fear it's rejecting you or judging you or whatever it is, then you've just contracted an infinite being that wants to expand in a pressureful space, right? So when you function as an infinite being, you really don't care, for example, what your kid is doing. Okay. what if I didn't care that they watch TV so much? What if I didn't care that they didn't recycle? Or what if I didn't put so much judgment on it? It's how, when people say lead by example, right? When you lead by example, you're providing a new wavelength to go out there. But as soon as you criticize something, then you've contracted it. And I watched this at a soccer game actually the other day. I've been watching this for weeks at soccer games actually. You can hear some of the coaches yelling at their players. Then you can see some of the coaches giving useful tips. Now you did this, okay, this didn't work so well, whatever. And they have a more respect for the coach when they go out there instead of feeling put upon and reject. But then I also listen to the parents in the stadium or grandparents or whoever it is. And some of them are like, God, do you see what they did? If that had been I literally heard someone say this, if that had been the national team, they would have had 3 people in front and they would have been doing this. And they said they need to learn to function like that. Okay. But the way it was delivered was negative. It was putting people down. And I was like, you know what? That just went into their world, that there's something wrong with them and that they're being judged. It's different than saying, hey, have you ever seen how the national team functions? It has 3 people up in the front. They're setting it up like this. We could learn something from that, right? There's and it's not that you have to police your words. It's that you have to change your energy to be something that expands other people's words. Because in the latter way of doing it, you don't have a judgment about whether they did it or not. In the former way that I explained of doing it, someone did have an opinion because they were criticizing them and saying that they did a bad job, and if they had understood how to do that, then things would have been different. We don't know that to be the truth. We don't, right? But we do this all the time. That's why the way you're functioning is, are you functioning from space or are you functioning from contraction? Are you functioning from consciousness, which has no point of view, right? Or are you functioning from judgment, right? Because when you function from judgment, then you create more of it in the world. You also create a reaction to your judgment. And a lot of the reason why people judge is because they are insecure themselves. Because if I'm an infinite being and I'm seeing a whole bunch of catastrophes around me or people who could be doing better than they are or whatever, I would go, oh, look at them, And the first thing I would say is that the human nature is to suffer. The human condition is suffering. But if you're not functioning from the human condition, then you're not suffering. You're observing, right? You might be able to change the wavelength of how things are functioning, and then you can offer something different. But we offer nothing different to this world. That's why when you watch 2 sides of a political argument fight with each other, yes, Michelle, hi. When you see two sides of an argument yelling at each other, all they're doing is playing tennis really fast and furiously. The ball is just going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So one of them gets tired or loses the argument suddenly, right? It's not creating anything. It's a fight, right? And that's why I'm like, when can we change our conversations to one of not fighting? So I went to a family dinner the other night. I just sat there and listened to each person just stating their point of view. And these are people who live together. They've known each other for their whole lives. Stating their point of view, which was opposite from the other. I'm like, wow, does this happen every single night? Or is this happening just because I'm there? New people came up. Or they're not new because we're part of the family. But why is a family functioning like this? Because each person is insecure that they're right, that their point of view has to be right. They have to be heard. My dad is a very quiet person. He has a lot of personal opinions about things, but he's not expressing them all the time because he doesn't think that everybody needs to hear them, right? Kind of ironic because here I am talking, right, about this. I'm talking about this, but I'm a teacher, right? So he's very quiet often, and he might make a comment, but he's not making a judgment. You can tell people's judgments from their faces. Their faces are contracted. And a lot of times they're contracted to keep everybody out because they have a sense that they hate their life. They hate, they hate their life. They hate what's going on around them. They don't like this person. They don't like this situation. They can't find a way out. To me, the way out is the question. Would an infinite being choose this, or am I functioning like an infinite being? I really like, am I functioning like an infinite being? Well, when the answer is no, my whole body melts. I'm like, oh, why am I doing that? Do I want to suffer? And sometimes I'll feel other people's energy inside me, and I will say, please take it out. I'll have to expel it. And then myself, where have I gone, and where do I have to reel myself in from? Because if you think of, I'm thinking of someone in particular, if you think of a parent that goes into someone's world and they judge them and they want to fix them, and also they worry about them all the time, how many parents do that? Just gobs, right? That's kind of like the way we function, especially women, right? So we go in and we worry about them. And then they don't want to be around us. Why? Because our energy is in their world. We've taken the power of an infinite being, functioning like a human being, and stuck all that power in someone else's body. When you take it out, they might just be interested in you. So, you think about how my grandmother used to say, well, I just ignore them. I just let them come to me, right? Or a parent would say, well, I know if I ignore my kid, that it'll want to pay attention because it will want my attention. Well, how about instead of that, if somebody said, I know when I'm not in their world, in their space, in their body with my energy, they might actually want to be with me. That's a wholly different thing, right? Because when you say you're ignoring them, you're functioning as a human being trying to get their attention. When you realize that you're in their space, right? Like an infinite being doesn't insert itself somewhere. It just is infinite. It's in total observation, and it's choosing what to do right now, like to make my lattes or whatever at a ridiculously late time of day for me, for joy, right? By the way, my body chose all the oils in here. My body said, I need this medicine. And this is a lot of intense oils. I put turmeric, ginger, cardamom, and lavender. That's a lot of essential oils in here. So, there's a slight tweaking of how we can function from and how we can behave that can totally radically change our parenting, our way of being in a partnership. Oh, Michelle, I'm so glad. And as you know, because you know me, Michelle, she says that Nikki Jordan, I so needed this right now. Thank you. Well, most people know that the universe gets me to talk. Don't forget, I surrendered to the universe 20 years ago or whatever, 22 years ago. The universe gets me to talk when something is necessary to be talked about. Okay, now it was necessary in my world because there's a lot of stuff going down. It just seemed, it's like, oh my God, I can't live with this energy. People have to know that it's hard to be me sometimes, because I want to be with people. I just want them to choose what some people would call enlightenment, but I call just seeing what you're doing and functioning from the infinite instead. It's not really so much enlightenment, because enlightenment's this thing that seems like it takes so long to get to. This doesn't take very long. It takes a few seconds, right? And everybody can do it because everybody is an infinite being, right? And there are those schools of thought that like to say, oh, there's certain kind of humans that they just give up on them and other ones aren't really human. No, I don't actually even really believe that, because all children are kind of functioning similarly, not all the same. Some of them might be more connected to their infinite being than others, or just out here for a different ride. And then we layer culture and society on top of it, right? But for me, to be around people, I am so looking for the curious and the willing, and wanting to be the people that step up and change their behavior by observation, right? Observation of what they're doing and energetically how it feels in the body. And that's why I focus so much on the body. The body was my first place. Listening to the language of the body. What is the body telling you, right? Is my first place. And if you don't know me, I snapped my hip open, not from 15 years, 2 hours a day of yoga, right? That got me stretched out a bit, but from faceball, right? Why? Because there was something locked in my head. And you do the most repetitive stress right here. Why? Because this is where the thoughts are, right? And there's so many muscles that we pull on here. You can see it in people's face. People talk about that all the time. Take a look at their face. right? It isn't just the rest of the body and the way they hold themselves. It's what they're doing with their face. And that's one of the first things I do in the morning. I wake up. I try to wake up every day and do this, but sometimes I just forget, right? What's going on with my face? Because I have some people who will tell me, oh yeah, I wake up and I'm so light and easy in the morning. It's easy for me. I'm not worried about the day. I'm like, fine, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about what you actually feel like in your face. Because even with some of those people, I might look at them in their face and they're like, do you see where you're contracting somewhere? You know, what are you gripping onto? What are you believing is true that's not even yours? Where did you go when you slept, such that you went into someone else's world? Or what were you worrying about? What are you fearing? You know, what are you rejecting? So anyway, my whole goal with a lot of what I teach, actually probably all of what I teach, is can we function as infinite beings? Can we start to transform the world this way? You're an infinite being in a human body, and you have an experience here, and you have an interaction here, and you have a contribution here, right? But when you function as a human being, we value the mind, we value our stories, we value the fact that other people are wrong. We like to talk about that a lot. In fact, it used to drive me crazy. Armchair politics, you know, people talking about everything that's wrong and doing nothing different. Nothing different. You know, you could, you know, be an activist, but you don't even have to be an activist. You can change your own energy. And just by judging everybody else from your armchair doesn't make you an action-oriented person. It might make you an observant person, or you might just be reactive and liking to prove someone else wrong. I laugh when I think about, oh yeah, people who like to argue become lawyers, you know. I don't know if that's true. You could be all kinds of things and like to argue, right? You could just be a parent, you know, you could be a sibling. You know, there is this thing. Why are we doing that? And who are you being when you do that? You may not be being yourself. I teach a lot of that, a lot one-on-one. I show people, who are you being right now? How many thousands of entities? And it might be tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, because you're so powerful. They're coming because they want to have your experience, or because you had a relationship with them before, like in another life. That's why understanding those lives is really important. And you don't need to know the details. People love to tell me the details about their past life. I'm not interested in the detail of their past life because I can see that. But what they may not be aware of is the energy they carried forward. The energy they carried forward from that life into this life, full of judgments, fears, curses, whatever it is that you carried forward. And I know this from working with people a long time ago, when I very first became an energy healer, you know, even as a friend before that, working with people who weren't getting better. They just weren't getting better, and they tried therapy and all kinds of stuff, and they said, I'm not getting better. There's something wrong with me. No, there's nothing wrong with you at all. There's nothing except for that you became an energy that you can't see because you brought it in from somewhere else. Nothing wrong with you, right? So the moment you recognize that, you can release it. And you might say, oh, I could have, you know, like you release it and you assume that it'll never come back again. But just assume it might, you know, so just be aware that you have that tendency and that you can start to erase it from your body. You can undock it from your cells. There's so many things that you could do, right? So many things that you could do and stop functioning that way. So I like to simplify things. I like to have things not be so much, excuse me, I'm falling off my chair. I like to have things not be so complicated how you release energy from your body, because it never was from day one with me. My teacher said, put your finger here, change the energy, gone, right? There weren't clearing statements. There wasn't, you know, a pattern you had to tap or all these kinds of things. These are great stepping stones to becoming sensitive. But after a while, you don't need all of that. You need the shortest, fastest thing, which is literally seeing what the energy is like in your body, where it's gripping, and change it. And that's how you know how to function from an infinite being, because you realize an infinite being wouldn't have those problems in its body. An infinite being would be all light and space, trying to create something here to change this world. And we need this now. We don't need this 10 minutes from now. Of course we need it still 10 minutes from now, but we don't need to find, like someone told me recently, well, when I retire, I'm going to do psychic work. I'm like, We need you to do it now, particularly in the field that they work in. They work in a very intense, abusive field. We need you to know how to go right in and neutralize that energy in that space and pull everybody out of the reactions. I am not kidding when I'm talking about you go into a space, you see an abuser, and you change the where they're functioning from because you're capable of doing it. And if you don't think you're capable of doing it and you're a healer, then you're limiting what you can do. Right? That's why studying modalities, and adhering to modalities doesn't work because it limits you to the modality. What if that was just to open your channels and then you're like, oh, I'm beyond this modality, I'm doing this other thing. But you had the argument with yourself that you had to do it the way that you learned. This isn't true. I'm here to tell you how to sense you and move beyond this. Because otherwise you're stuck to all of them. And it's not true consciousness to not be you. It's following. Oh, there was an article today, and I didn't read it yet, but it was a picture of a political party in the United States that had all just voted the same way, except for one person. And it said the cult of Republicans. And I've been talking about that for a while, that as soon as you become a follower and you don't have your own independence, you are actually a puppet. You have lost your capacity. All these people in our governments need to pull back their own capacities. No longer follow, because that's what's going to change politics, not being a follower. Unfortunately, many of them might believe in it because they think that's what gets the party elected. But this is not change. If anyone wants change, we need to go back to the way where people could voice their opinions, and maybe they weren't all the same. Maybe by voicing differences of opinions, we saw differences in culture or flavors of ideas, but we had more honest dialogue and more option for change. Right now, we need everyone to function as infinite beings, to lose their following. You could make a list of all the things that you follow. You maybe follow ideas. You might follow famous people. You might follow teachers. You might follow your parents, your grandparents, your culture. You might adhere to, whatever trinkets you have from the past, from your ancestors, because you don't want to lose them. They're gone unless you stuck them in that thing. They're gone. They're gone on to the next thing. What you have is the memories. The memories bring back the person. The memories bring back that energy, right? But you don't have to hold anything hostage, right? Boy, if we could teach children this, relationships might be totally different in the future. And maybe they will be anyway. Okay, so functioning, it's where we function from. Are we functioning as an infinite being in the human world, or we function as a human being in the human world with all the limitations of the way the human beings can create and change this place? Antarctica had its warmest day on record, right? How are we going to change this place? There can be things happening in the cosmos that are affecting our planet as well, but we need to be truly understanding of the energy of what's happening, and then we'll be able to make choices that will affect the future so that the children of this world will have something worth living in. That's what I'd like. I would also like, as I said, all the people who are on their way out, who have transitioned out or are transitioning out or choosing to transition out, to release everything from this world. All of their imprints. So gather all their energy back to themselves. Move on in totality. No judgments, no curses, no bonds with anything. To the new place, all energy. All energy is transmutable. All energy can transform things for better or for worse. And that's the basics of physics. Everything is energy. So I vow to always keep trying to function as often as I can as an infinite being, right? I keep myself there. When I do not feel there, am I feeling someone else's suffering, or am I suffering myself? That's one of the first questions, because human nature, human being, the human condition is suffering, right? To transcend that is to function as an infinite being, which doesn't necessarily mean to become enlightened on some really long path. It can be very simple. So that's my goal, is to simplify all of this so we can use it every day. Okay, I hope this contributed to. Have a nice evening, day, whatever time it is for you, morning, and I'll see you again next time.